Hey, Marvin. Oh, you're upside down. Okay, so
You get me now? Am I good?
I got you now. You're all set. So
Okay.
I did my little intro as to who I am and why I'm here today, and now I'm going to introduce Marvin Washington, an NFL player, former NFL player, played for my favorite team, the New York Jets, for many years. Moved on to the Denver Broncos in 1998 and won the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 33. So Marvin has a ring. So congratulations to that, Marvin. Marvin has since he left football, he will talk about his post football career. But what's most interesting is that he's gotten involved in the cannabis industry and works with a company called Isodial. So that's where our idea today was a branding panel, and we were thinking of having multiple people on the panel. Then we decided Marvin was just the right person to really discuss what it's like for an athlete, a celebrity to jump into the cannabis space. How does that work for you? We're going to get into that a little bit later. I really want to sort of kind of introduce people to you a little bit more. People who don't know that much about Marvin Washington. So Marvin Washington was born in Dallas in 1965.
Denver.
Okay, you were born in Dallas, raised in Denver. Okay, so I got that wrong.
No, reverse that. Born in Denver, raised in Dallas.
Right, born in Denver, raised in Dallas. Okay, so while you're in Dallas, upbringing, you were a tall kid. You're 6'6" today, and I guess you were pretty tall when you were younger, and you got into sports. Your first favorite sport was basketball, and you played basketball in high school. So what I'd like you to do is to sort of explain to people how someone like yourself starts off having a sports career. What was it that led you into sports besides the fact that you were a tall guy? And why did you choose basketball? And then explain to people how you left basketball and went to football.
Like most kids, my dad back in the early 70s, he was a Texan and he made me a football fan, made me a Dallas Cowboy fan. Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, and Bob Lilly and all those guys. I can remember watching them win the first Super Bowl when I was about 6 or 7. So I was always, playing in the neighborhood, not organized, just playing as kids did in the 70s because we spent most of our time outside and not inside playing on video games. We spent it outside were our video games, and we would play, pickup games of basketball, football, baseball, and what have you. So I was already a sports-minded kid. And my father was working at Braniff Airline at the time, and then his job got transferred to Dallas down to Love Field. And when I was 12, and we moved to Dallas 3 days before the start of school. We moved on a Friday, and school started Monday. And so I always wanted to play football, and the school had a football team, so I went out for the football team. And that kind of quickened my pace of being accepted, and coming from a different state and town and not knowing everybody, I got to know people quicker and whatever. And so I played football, basketball, ran track and soccer my freshman, my 7th grade year, and it just came on from there. Went to high school and I just played basketball because I was already 6'4.5", 6'5" at the time. And I played 4 years of college basketball. High school basketball, and was lucky enough to get a scholarship to play it with University of Texas El Paso for Don Haskins, which of the Glory Roll fame. He was the first coach to put 5 black players on the court in a national championship game, and he beat Adolph Ruff and his boys for the national title. And I went down there and played for him a couple years, and the guy that recruited me, and it's still a good friend of mine, his name is Tim Floyd. He got the head job at Idaho, and I followed him up there. But to back that up a little bit, I was 6'6" and 235 at UTEP, and playing a little bit, not as much as I wanted. And Coach Haskins had told me, like, Marvin, you missed your calling. You got a great body for football. And so I kind of took it as a failure and a rejection that he was trying to take me to football. And I bucked up against it. But when Coach Floyd talked to me about it and told me to come to Idaho where I could play basketball and football, I said, why not, And I wanted to see if I could play, because by that time I had friends that were playing Major D1 football, and they were on a trajectory to go to the next level from Tim Brown to Chet Brooks, and guys of that nature. And so I went to Idaho and I played 1 year of football and 1 year of basketball. And after my 1 year of football, I was lucky enough to get drafted by the New York Jets and make a career of it.
All right, so let's stay with your high school and college years for a minute. In the interview that we did for the CBD Guide, I found it interesting. We talked about, I said to you, do you use marijuana? And you said no. Currently, these days, it's not something you use. CBD, yes, but you don't smoke pot, so to speak.
No, I haven't since probably my sophomore, junior year in college.
So I found it interesting, and what you told me is that back when you were a high school athlete, all the kids used to smoke pot before the games, after the games, or whatever. It was very common.
Yeah. I grew up in the inner city, but my high school was one of the last ones that was fully integrated. I would say it was 60-40, majority to minority. And, most of the kids were kind of middle class and whatever, and they smoked marijuana back then. And so being part of that, being a 14-year-old kid on varsity, not saying I gave in to peer pressure and whatever, but, that's when I started smoking regular with guys on the team, and they would smoke it before the game, and that became my routine. I don't think I played a high school game without smoking before the game, because that's what we would do. And the thing that it gave me, particularly my first couple years, being 14 and 15-year-old going against these 16, 17, and 18-year-olds playing in these packed stadiums, because we had a pretty good team. And it relaxed me and made me focus and forget about the crowd. And then my last couple years, it was just like to get focused and whatever. So I think that's where it kind of gave me a competitive advantage. And I did it probably up until my sophomore year of college. Not that I smoked every game, because we were, in college, we were going on the road and whatever. It was harder to do. But in high school, yeah, once we got out of school and we get ready to go to the game, whether we ride to the game individually or riding to the school to catch the bus, we were smoking, and that was part of my routine. So I come to learn, like a lot of athletes did that, from basketball, football to baseball and whatever. A lot of guys, that's part of their routine, particularly when I get to professional football. I learned that that's what guys did before the game.
So you were drafted by the Jets in 1989. Is that what you found when you got to professional football? When you got to, forget what the name of the field was then.
One of the many things that I found. The locker room of 50-something guys was probably just like, high schools. You had your drinkers and your stoners and womanizers and bad guys and Christians and straight guys and whatever. So I always said, like, a professional football team with all the guys that it had is probably a microcosm of society. So if whatever percentage is smoking marijuana in society, I believe it is in professional sports, particularly football. Whatever percentage of society are Christians, I believe, that percentage is going to show on a football team. So it's just a microcosm of society, and a lot of guys like to relax by, after practice, before games, whatever. And I've always said this, and this is my deal. Nobody smokes cannabis to get high. Everybody's trying to smoke to feel better. And so we all know what cannabis can do, and playing in the NFL and you're not having a lot of success, it leads to a lot of stress and anxieties. And I believe that's what some of the guys did to relieve their stress and anxiety of after practice and going into a game.
All right, so we'll talk about drugs in the NFL and opioids and stuff like that in a minute, injuries that you might have sustained and, what you learned about what they were giving you. But what was it just like in general to be in the NFL? What was your experience like? You played for the Jets. Jets weren't a winning team, but what was it like for you just to be in the NFL?
Well, it wasn't a winning team, but I always wanted to live in New York since I was probably 12 or 13. I read a couple of books. One of them was about Earl Manigault, the GOAT, the Harlem playground legend. And so it just happened to be that I got drafted up here. So I thought it was meant to be. And us not winning. Uh, you know, we tried. We were professional. We just didn't have enough talent, obviously. But being in New York and experience New York City and the restaurants and the arts and the music and the culture and everything with that, that was fabulous for me. That was absolutely fabulous. Only bad part that I had that I go back on is once again wins and losses, and you know eventually I got to winning teams later on in my career. But it was fun, you know, at the old Giant stadiums and living out in Long Island and experiencing all that. And at the time I was raising my kids in Long Island. I was totally fine with it. I have no issues with it, and I still have friends that work for the Jets and that are in the NFL in different positions, different coaches. One's the defense coordinator for the Broncos, one's the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. And so, you know, that's the thing that football gave me is lifelong friendships that we all tried to have a common goal and work together towards that goal. And sometimes you come up short, sometimes you didn't. I played on a team that didn't, but you know, we were trying to win, and we gave all our effort, but we just couldn't get it done.
Well, in 1988, you played for a team that did. So you left the Jets, went to the 49ers, and then went to the Broncos, and I guess you went home again. You went back to Denver. So that must have been fun for you, getting signed by the Broncos. And lo and behold, 1988, you guys win the Super Bowl, and you knock off the Jets in the conference final.
Yeah, that was a fun year. You know, the year before I went to the NFC Championship with the 49ers, and and let me say this: the reason why I went to the 49ers is because ex-coach for the Jets was a scout at the 49ers my first year, and so by that time it's a little bit of what you've done and then who you know. So I was able to go to a winning organization, and then went to the Broncos because you know there were three guys on that staff that knew me, and they were, you know, on the Broncos staff, and one was a defense coordinator who was my defensive line. So I went to the Broncos, man. We finished 14-2. We had like a 13 game winning streak, and we played the Jets in the AFC Championship, and they were up 10-0 at halftime, and yeah, that would have made me feel some type of way for life if they would have won, because I felt that was the championship game. Either us or the Jets would have beat Atlanta. But we were, you know, we had the better team, and we beat them. And then we went to down to Miami a couple weeks later, and we beat the Falcons, and I got my Super Bowl ring. And I think the football gods were looking out for me because of all the years I spent with the Jets of going 3-13 and 1-15 one year, and 6-10 and 4-12, things of that nature. And yeah, I think all football players should experience that.
Well, you broke our hearts, but you know, so happy for you that you got to
I
experience.
wasn't the only guy. I wasn't the only guy or team to break the Jets'
That's for
heart
sure.
in
That's for
their
sure.
50 years of
But we were
existence.
actually sort of partially rooting for you because you're a Jet. You know, you were with the Broncos, but you know, once a Jet, always a Jet. So we rooted for you, you know, partially. You know, if the Jets aren't going to win, might as well be the Broncos with Marvin, right? So that's how that went down. So you had one more year in football. I'm not really that familiar with how your career was going by then. It was about 11 years deep in NFL. Were you banged up? What was your experience with injuries?
Uh, yeah, as banging as you can be, I'd already had uh, 7 surgeries, from my fingers getting corrected, and to, my shoulders being reconstructed, and my foot being fixed, and all these were orthopedic injuries, and uh, that I had after the season. Except with my foot, I was in San Francisco the previous year, and I missed the last 4 games, and then I was there starting defensive end my last year, and I tore my quad tendon, and that pretty much ended my career. I tore it in St. Louis against the greatest show on turf with Marshall Falk and Kurt Warner and Isaac Hoke and all those guys that they had, and that ended my career. But you know, I have no complaints. I got to win the Super Bowl, and you know, the average NFL career is 3 years and 2 games, and as a 6th-round choice to be able to almost quadruple that, I was satisfied. The game had given me a lot, and it was time to go on and get on with life's work.
What was your experience with the drugs that were given to you by trainers, to cope with injuries? Did you ever had a concussion? What was it like? Were they just overloading you with opioids? Did you take them all? Did you say no? How did that go?
I took them all. I took them all because to me, I understand the issue with opioid addiction of the former players and the access they have them in the NFL. But I don't see how you can play the game without some pain blockers or something to help you modulate that pain, because it is a pain game. There are injuries that you see that if they were going on in regular, everyday American life, you would miss work. You would be in the hospital getting surgeries, and guys have to play.
Hey, by the way, Marvin, quick break. Happy 420 East Coast. All right. Just wanted to acknowledge 420 here on the East Coast.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Always.
All right.
And yeah, if you have acute pain, you're going to need something, and if you're beat up, you're going to need something because, the best ability that you have as an NFL player is availability. And in order to, to provide for your family and whatever, you have to be out there. And so this becomes part of your routine. I tell people, like, listen, by the time I was in year 5 or 6, I could write my own script of what I needed to play, from the anti-inflammatories to the plain blockers to the Toradol shot before the game, and then to the Percocets or Vicodin or Tylenol 3 that I was taking after the game to modulate and help me deal with the pain. There's an issue there because you take my career in its 11th year, I was doing this from everywhere from August to January. But a lot of guys can do it, have been doing it for, shorter period of time or longer period of time. And then once they leave football, they're not able to cut it off, So my thing is, there is going to be opiates in the NFL, because it's a pain game. It's not a physical game. That's basketball. The NFL is car collisions every play with somebody. You're getting a car wreck going 25, 30 miles an hour every play against 300, 320, 330-pound guys. And so you're gonna have some pain that you're gonna have to modulate and deal with. But my thing that I've been telling the NFL since 2014, why not give these guys an alternative? Why not give them something natural that can do some of the things, like during the week, I don't need to take a Tylenol 3 and a naproxen, which is an anti-inflammatory, when maybe I can medicate myself with cannabis that is an anti-inflammatory. It helps me relax. It helps with me with stress. And so I can take that and taking this anti-inflammatory and recover, have no negative side effects, no chance of addiction, and be back ready at practice the next day anyway. So this is what I want. And then if you're going to go with full-on cannabis, regulate it just like you do your opiates. Have it under the doctors and trainers' care, and you give guys individual doses of it, whether it's 50 milligrams, 30 milligrams, whatever it is, and you don't have to smoke it. I know Roger Goodell came out and was like, we don't want our guys smoking. Well, as we know, there are so many other deliveries that these guys can take. They can take an edible. They can take a tincture. They can take a transdermal patch, or whatever it is. There are other ways to deliver it to you in a healthy way, in a healthy, productive way, instead of just smoking it. And so we're getting there with the NFL. I believe in 5 years, all this is going to be moved because it's going to be legal and everybody's going to use it in all sports and in the country, but we're not there yet. But they're going to get there to where they're going to have to give their guys a healthy alternative instead of like having, there's 20,000 ex-players, instead of having the 20,000 ex-players who are 4 times as more likely to be addicted to opiates than general society. They have to deal with this because we know what opiate addiction is doing with general society. And so that kind of tells you what's happening with the 20,000 alumni of the NFL.
So we're moving ahead a little bit and sort of discussing, how cannabis and CBD in particular can help athletes. When did you figure this out? You said 2014. Who tipped you off?
A company that I was with. I knew nothing about it. I was out at a golf tournament and we were honoring Michael Strahan, and I got approached by this company that was a cannabis company. And so we've met a couple times, and I got educated on CBD because I only knew about THC. So I didn't know the difference between CBD or CBGB or TLC or whatever. And I started down that road from there, or learn about the medicinal benefits of it. And I wanted to get on and join them because, you know, talking about the opiate addiction of the NFL also has another issue, and that's the closed head injury, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. And it's been shown, and the government holds a patent that says, THC and no, CBD can act as a neuroprotectant and an antioxidant for the brain in relationship to concussion. So I believe the NFL can set their ship right by embracing the whole plant, because it's going to take care of the addiction, it's going to take care of the head issues, because nobody wants to let their kids play a game where they're going to leave with a brain disease. And if the NFL is the number one sports league in the country and in the world as far as revenue generate, if they want to stay there, they have to take care of the safety issues. Because just because you're number one this decade doesn't mean you're going to be number one the next decade or a couple more decades. Because go back to the 1950s, the top three sports were baseball, boxing, and horse racing. It's not that way anymore. You don't see, you go out into your neighborhoods, you don't see a lot of gyms like you used to. And horse racing is just a seasonal deal that is trying to survive. So the NFL can't get complacent and think that they're going to keep doing things that they've done for decades. They have to change. They have to change their trajectory, and the way they're going to change is embracing safety. And the safety, you've done all you can with rules and equipment. I think the next safety and the moonshot for the NFL is going to come through science, and the science that says cannabis can help out with a lot of the safety issues that the players are dealing with.
Well, the latest news with the NFL is, they've been very anti-cannabis for a long time, and they're starting to soften up a little bit on their suspension policy, which is good. Many players have been suspended for many games, for even whole seasons, even careers destroyed because they didn't follow the policy of the league. So that's good news. The league is stepping in the right direction. Did you ever suffer any concussions?
Yeah. Looking through my medical records, 4 that I had, but I never missed a play, never missed a game. And then back then we called them dings. You'd get those and it'd go wide and you'd straighten it out and whatever, those mini concussions. Yeah, probably every practice and every game you got those. But that's part of football. Like I said, it's not a contact sport, baby. It's full on collisions.
Do you worry about CT for yourself?
Of course. When Boston University did their study, they took the brains of 100 former players, and 98 of them had CTE. What makes me lucky enough to be in the 2%? And I told an ex-teammate, I think when you look at who's come out and had it, like Frank Gifford, you can't tell the story of the NFL or even college football without Frank Gifford. He had a Hall of Fame football and broadcasting career because he was in our living room for 20-something years in the 70s with Howard and Dandy Dunn Meredith and and the rest of that crew. And after he died, his family donated his brain to the brain bank, and he had CTE. So if he had it, Frank Gifford, Mr. Football and married showgirls and whatever, he had it, I think we all have it to a certain extent. And I think when it's all said and done, I think it's going to show that all football players have it to a certain extent. If you want to take it from 1 to 10, maybe Frank was in the 2 to 3 range. I think that's where most of us would like to be, but then you have the guys in the 10 range, and that's when you get the tragedy. But it's not just with professional footballs. It's with professional football players. It's with college football players, high school and high school football players, because CTE is just not exclusive to the NFL. If you're banging your head and if you're banging your head, you're banging your head, 50 or 60 times a day for 5 days a week. Yeah, it's not exclusive to the NFL.
Well, CBD has, become a big deal amongst a lot of athletes. Primarily, I would say, because you kind of get around drug testing to some degree. You're not testing for THC, perhaps. It's beneficial, but is it something that athletes prefer just separately THC, or do they like the mix? Do they want an entourage? Do they want some THC, or they just don't do the THC because they can't make it through drug tests?
Well, speaking of my brethren, the NFL guys, they know the NFL has eased up and they're not suspending guys and whatever. But for when the NFL was against it, guys knew when the drug test was. So it wasn't a drug test, it was an intelligence test. So what guys did was they would chill out the 2 weeks before camp and clean out. And then in the first couple of days, everybody's going to get tested. And then after that test, it was 420, and you can smoke to your heart's desire from that date to the season. Right now, I know a lot of guys that are doing THC and CBD, or doing them both, whether it's one on one or 2-to-1 or 10-to-1 or what have you. They want something, and it depends on the individual. So they want something that's going to make them feel better, and they can stay away from the opiates. Because the thing is, these guys are playing in the information age. There's a lot of information out there about the medicinal benefits of the whole plant, and mostly about THC and CBD. We played in the dark ages. We didn't know, but they have this information there, and guys are, taking what's best for them, whether, like I said, whether it's THC or CBD, and that entourage effect. There's, I'm for the whole plant. I believe in the entourage effect, but I also believe that you can get the entourage effect with an isolate CBD and combining it with other things like turmeric and glucosylceramide and chondroitin, and get that entourage effect. Just not, all the cannabinoids and whatever, because some people are really sensitive to THC and they can't do it. Or some people that I know that I give my isolate CBD that I said that has other ingredients to, they work in law enforcement. They work in places that are still doing UAs and testing these guys, and that isolate CBD seems to work. But they got to be careful because it can stack. it definitely can stack.
Well, give me your CBD pitch. As for people who don't really know that much about CBD, what it does, what does it do for you?
For me, a guy that played 11 years in the NFL in the trenches, I've had 7 major surgeries. I got pre-arthritic fingers and joints. It's all for the Tin Man. I think it's great for current athletes, former athletes, weekend warriors, anybody with an active lifestyle, or anybody that wants to get to their percent of homeostasis. And I don't know if I'm at 100%, but I know what CBD has done for me. Like I said, it's all for the Tin Man. I feel better. I sleep better. I don't have as many aches and bruises during this time of home confinement and what have you. I used to travel up to 120 to 180,000 miles a year with my different companies. I haven't gotten on a plane since March. There's a certain amount of anxiety and stress there and frustration, but CBD helps me relax. CBD helps me, get through it all. And I know this is not popular to say, what do you have to lose? Try it. Because, we heard somebody say that, and we see how that works out. But I would give it a try. And everybody that I give it to, from my family to my friends to my ex-teammates to peers that I play with, from my neighbor to my mailman or whatever, they seem to like it. And I tell people this. I said, before you start taking CBD, you have to be consistent with it. But before you start taking, do the OT like you did in college. Put on the right column, on the left column, what's bothering you, and on the right column, what's not bothering you. And then in 3 weeks, come back and do that same list. And I guarantee you that right column with things that make you feel good and the things that are bothering you, it's going to be less than this column over here, because it's going to, It has to bind into your endocannabinoid system. It has to get into your system and get going. And so for me, it does that for me, but for you, it might be something different. One of the things that I found out as being 54 years old is like by taking CBD, I don't know why, I'm not making 2 or 3 trips to the bathroom at night. I'm sleeping through the night, and whatever's happening there, it's happening. So that's one of the things that it helps me out with. That I know, but it's not for everybody. Some of my friends say it helps them sleep. Some of my friends said they just feel better. Some of my friends said it helps with their digestion and what have you, gives them clarity of mind, relaxes them, and what have you, because all of our bodies are different. But I do know that CBD will interact with your own endocannabinoid system and be a benefit.
All right, so I see your shirt. You're wearing the ISO Sport shirt. We're here to talk about branding, and this is your brand. ISO Sport is your CBD brand with Isodial, the Canadian company up in Vancouver. So tell us about Isodial and your relationship with ISO Sport and your relationship with Isodial.
Tell you about Isodial is thing I can tell you is like you're a shareholder, be patient. We're going through a total restructure that started 2 years ago with us. So we went through it first. We went from a market cap of 350 million all the way down to about 20 million now, but we've gotten rid of most of our legacy founders and partners and got new management and got a new direction with the company. I got involved with Isodial in 2016 or 17, beginning of 17. And I wanted to come out with a sports line that was just totally dedicated to the athlete. Because there was nobody out there that was doing that, because I had gone through all these conferences and expos, and all these people were like, yeah, the CBD can help the athletes, it can do this, can do that, and whatever, but nobody had a dedicated line. And so we came up with this line called ISO Sport, and we have everything from soft gels to pain cream to a soothe to pre and post workout to a focus during the day. We have a daily vitamin that has vitamin C, B, and D in it with CBD. We have one of the things that athletes like is we have a rest tablet that helps you sleep. So we got another one that helps with, muscle soreness and whatever with our soft gel. So I think we kind of covered it. And most of the athletes that are taking it, including, some Jets and Giants and my former teammates, everybody loves the line. We're in over 500 vitamin shops right now, which is now online. But yeah, that's where we are with ISO Sport. And like most of the people in this industry, we're definitely shifting our focus to more of an e-commerce, direct to consumer deal, because I think people that have been locked down through this, not locked down, sheltered safe in place, see that they can order everything online. And I think, this pandemic is the death knell of brick and mortar. And I think most cannabis businesses, particularly CBD, you better adjust, because getting on shelves and doing that type of deal is I don't think that's going to be the play anymore. I think this whole deal was, if they come out of this, companies come out of this, we'll see. But there's going to be some going as ways. There's going to be some Chapter 13s, which were going to happen anyway, because I felt like this whole space was overvalued, and companies were out there spending on nice office suites and executive compensation instead of developing products for the marketplace. So we have done that, and we're pushing ahead.
So celebrity brands are a big deal in cannabis, from Snoop Dogg to Willie Nelson, Bob Marley family. Just announced Killer Mike is working with Cookies, and Method Man started a line called Tikal. Do these celebrity brands matter? Does it really stir up sales, or is it just nice to have a name behind it?
That I don't know. I know it didn't work for us. We had a celebrity, and it didn't work for us. And my thing is I'm not against celebrities. I'm definitely not against celebrities getting behind a brand or having their own brand, because they can bring a lot of attention to it. But being in this industry since 2014 and gone through most of all the conferences and and expos and being on all these panels and walking the floor. And I've seen celebrity brands out there, but one thing that I haven't seen is the celebrity. And I'm of the thinking, if one celebrity gets in this space and gets behind a brand, they can have a pretty good market share. But I'm welcoming of all athletes and all celebrities getting in here. But I give a line of caution to them and to the companies that are paying them and to be endorsers of their products. Make sure that they get behind it. Make sure that they believe in it. Make sure that they're at the conferences and telling you about the benefits of it. And before a celebrity puts his money behind it, he has to be behind it. Because can you imagine if a A-list celebrity gets behind a cannabis brand and they're at twice a month when before the world closed down, all these conferences that were going on, people are going to flock there. They're going to flock to that booth. They're going to flock to their online presence. They're going to flock to anything that he says. I haven't seen that yet. So when a celebrity comes in, I'm sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, because I've seen them come and go. But I'm waiting for the celebrity to really come in and put the elbow grease on to it and get behind that brand. I think they'll do a tremendous job.
As a person of color in the cannabis industry, where do you think things are at right now as far as diversity and equity? Are things moving in the right direction?
I think so. Not fast enough, but it will be. As I've always said, we're not trying to do business as usual. We're trying to do a better business. We don't want to look like Silicon Valley, but cannabis, hemp, and CBD has potential to disturb any market and be explosive. And so the people that were hurt most by prohibition, I think we in the communities that were hurt by most of the prohibition of cannabis should participate now that it's gone from the black market to the green market. And I think it has to happen, through, I'm hoping that we get a national bill about cannabis and social equity and social justice and what have you. And I think that will address it. But I think it is being addressed when cannabis started out west of the Mississippi, outside of California. There's not a lot of population centers that have large African Americans. Now that it's coming back east of the Mississippi, you have these population centers that it needs to be addressed, and it is being addressed. You have New York, Philly, Baltimore, Miami, Atlanta, Chicago, and all these big cities, where the people are, and there's a lot of minorities that live there. It has to be addressed. Denver, Colorado, I love Denver, but there's not a lot of minorities there. Portland, Seattle, not there. But as this matures and takes another turn, it has to be, because people are not going to share their profits. I know that. And it could be as much like people can look at a board and say, well, there's no minorities or whatever. I can't say it's racism, because, just like in the NFL and coaches, you hire people that and you're comfortable with, and mostly that your friends and coming from recommendations. So there has to be something to where if you're going to have passed these cannabis laws in your state, you have to make sure that the communities that were hurt the most can participate in the people. Because, I know that the reason why cannabis was put on Schedule 1 is because Richard Nixon wanted to go after two people. He wanted to go after the counterculture people of the 60s and 70s that were protesting the Vietnam War, and he wanted to go after African Americans. And despite him having the Schaefer report that said everything that we know about cannabis today, it's not a gateway drug, it's not highly addictive, it's not this and the other, he threw that all away, ignored it, put the bill in Congress, passed both houses, signed within a month. And that in earnest started the war on drugs. But the Vietnam War ended in 1975. So the people in the tie-dye, they've kind of switched and went to the suit and tie. And some of them even went to the red hats. Black and brown people couldn't change our color. So even though our youth is the same level as Caucasians, we're still getting arrested, depending on where you live, 3 to 13 times more for cannabis. I've always said, if you're white and you smoke cannabis in Manhattan, it's legal. But if you're black and you're smoking in the Bronx or certain part of Brooklyn, you're going to be part of the system. You're going to get introduced to the criminal justice system that can have an effect on you for the rest of your life. And yeah, we're not looking for handouts. We're not looking for reparations. We just want fairness in this business that targeted us. And we got former people that were in the Nixon administration that says that. How does Richard Nixon, did he have something against blacks? Well, if you go to my IG page, there's a video clip of him talking about Sammy Davis Jr. being the first African-American to stay there, but he goes, yeah, I didn't know with the Kennedys and whatever that Sammy Davis was the first Nick, and then he caught himself, black, to stay there. So he used that word freely, and his tape showed it, and he wanted to go after African-Americans, and he did, because when he put it under Controlled Substance Act, that started the war on drugs in earnest. The prison population quadrupled, particularly with men of color. Then you had Reagan coming in with his war on drugs. Bill Clinton, God bless his soul, and I'm a Clinton Democrat, whatever, but he signed that crime bill, and now we got 45 in here. He's trying to do the same thing, and whether people know it or not, this administration is totally anti-cannabis. 45 may be oblivious to it and doesn't care, but I guarantee you at the DOJ, Bill Barr does. I guarantee you Stephen Miller does, because they know. They know what they can do by keeping it illegal. And you're starting to see it. If they could, Jeff Sessions would have came down on this space and this industry like a ton of bricks. He could have, but he couldn't, because then there was going to be no more funding for his Justice Department. You know, so, and then none of the nominees were going to get through. But listen, Joe Biden is not exactly the marijuana guy, but I believe if we have a progressive House and a Senate, we can get there. We can get there. Plus, right now, I don't know if anybody knows that I'm the lead plaintiff in a lawsuit against the DOJ. We just presented a amicus brief to the Supreme Court about our case because the district court wanted us to go through the DEA to get cannabis either legalized or rescheduled. And there's two issues with that. Number one is going through the DEA, the review process is anywhere from 9 to 20 years. And some of the kids that are in my lawsuit, they need the medicine now. And number two, if the DEA said they're going to reschedule it and schedule it, you know, and reschedule cannabis, what does that do? It puts cannabis in everybody's business under the auspice of the FDA review. And so that's going to put me out of business. That's going to put everybody in this space out of business, because we have to go through this FDA review, and it's going to put the black market back out there, and then we're going to have more enforcement. So we said, forget that. It's still holding in district court, so now we're appealing to be heard by the Supreme Court. And I know it's a long shot, but Judge Roberts' court, and he just got bashed by Pence yesterday, but Judge Roberts' court is a fairness court and a Constitution court. They're not like the right said activists. They go by the Constitution. Well, we have a constitutional right to use this plant and for it to be legal. And so that's what we're going on with Judge Roberts' court. And I know it's a conservative court, but you had the Marriage Equality Act come out of there. You had the ACA Act, Obamacare, affirmed there. You had the Dreamers get their protection there. And you had the LGBT community get their civil rights affirmed in this conservative court. So why not go and take a shot? And we're taking a shot. And in amicus brief, if people don't know, the plaintiffs can't write it themselves. Our attorneys can't write it. We need to get friends of the court. And we got some real powerful groups and friends that have joined on with this brief to be a part of. We have LGBT community. We have soldiers, doctors, nurses, accountants, Americans for Safe Access, Last Prisoner Project, individuals from, Rachel Rapino to Basketball Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas to the Gridiron Greats to Athletes for Care and all these athletes. We have to show a collective because we just don't want to show these judges that it's just me and four other plaintiffs that want it legal. No, we have to show it as a community. And I think we've done a pretty good job of bringing it together. We got NFL Wives. We got some pretty good groups to show that we need the legalization of cannabis to happen now because, we've been under this prohibition and lies for 80-something years, starting with Henry Anslinger back in the 30s. Let's move this thing into the 21st century. I believe the 21st century, we're doing a turn right now. We were doing the turn, but this is quicking it. So let's go and let's see what all the cannabinoids in this plant can do. Let's make it legal. Let's make it, get this thing as medicine and as many as medicine cabinets as it can, because we all know when cannabis goes into a community, opiate addiction goes down, the crime rate doesn't go up. You're going to get all these ad valorem taxes that can go for schools, roads, whatever. It can bring back the manufacturing industry. It can disrupt, hemp can disrupt any and build anything, and it can disrupt any industry that it goes into. And so I believe that this country's making a turn, and I think cannabis can lead the way. Because, every 40 years, this country goes through some type of revolution anyway. We really haven't had one since the 60s, but we had the 60s, Roaring 20, the industrial age. 20 years for that, we had the Civil War. We had a real conflict or revolution, but every generation goes through it, and I believe cannabis can lead this turn for the next century.
Hey, Marvin, thank you so much for bringing up such an important court case that could overturn prohibition, and thanks for your involvement in that case. We are down to about 8 minutes to go. I want to switch back to football, and then we have a couple of questions. So maybe 5 minutes on football. We're staring at the football season, looking at us coming down the road 2 weeks from now in college, or even less. Colleges, teams are bailing. Professional football looks like they're moving ahead, but who knows what will happen with a lot of the baseball teams having problems. Where do you see the football season? Is there going to be a football season this year?
I think they're going to try, but I don't know how they're going to pull this off. Hockey and basketball can do it because they put their players in a bubble. When you're talking about a football team, you're not only talking about 53 players, 15 practice squad guys, another 20 coaches, another 10 trainers, strength coaches, what have you, administration. So you're talking about 150 people that have to do everything right every day. And once they leave that complex, then you multiply that by another 10 or whatever it is, because these guys can go out and be with their families, their girlfriends, their friends, and what have you. So in football, it takes one guy to mess up a play, and you're looking at, touchdown. How are you expecting these guys to go out, number one, and be perfect for 16 games, and they're not in a bubble? Number two, these are guys, the majority of them between 21 and 26 years old. We already see that, the young people, the young people, at 21, I would have felt invincible. I would have said, I'm not worried about the disease. And would I would have pushed the envelope a little bit? Yeah, I would have. And then you're taking these guys that are millionaires and they got money and whatever, and you want them to go from practice to home, practice to home, practice to home. That's not going to happen. And I was telling a buddy of mine today, it was like, they can do that or whatever, but they can bring it all into their house. They don't need that. They don't need to go out. They can bring the parties and the interactions all to their house, apartments, or whatever. So football, I wish them luck. If anybody can do it, it may be the NFL, but I wouldn't bet on that. I don't think college and high school football has a chance. I don't think so. Being on campus, being around other students, being, at parties, being on campus, whatever, I don't think they have a chance. A high school has no chance. And the thing that a lot of young people recover, but some of them have these long-term health issues. What about their aunts and their grandmothers and their parents that they're going back to? That's where it can be tragic. It can be tragic. I don't understand why we're doing it, but they will see that this disease is not going to bend the NFL. It's not going to bend to college football, and certainly not high school football.
All right, thanks for letting us know that. I'm going to take a couple of questions here. I think it's important to respond to questions. People spend time to submit it. Kenneth Walton, so he's responding to earlier in the interview. He says, "Is that Tim Floyd who wound up at Iowa State and then the Chicago Bulls? What do you think Coach Floyd would say about cannabis?"
Uh, Coach Floyd has used some of my CBD. Most of my former coaches, I send my CBD to. Coach Floyd is a good friend of mine. I talk to him occasionally and what have you. You know, he's down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Yeah, it's the same Tim Floyd that I've been knowing since I've been 17 years old. And I believe Coach Floyd, you know, Coach Floyd was always a progressive guy, closed-minded like a lot of coaches, but on a one-to-one level or something that's going to be beneficial to his athletes and not a detriment, I think he would be on the side of you know, letting guys medicate with it.
Well, that's pretty smart of Kenneth to bring that up. I didn't think about that. That Tim Floyd was the same guy with the Bulls. The same Kenneth, who's our main questioner here. Other people should be submitting questions. Ask the question: do you think cannabis helps therapeutically, or can it also possibly prevent the development of diseases like CTE in football players or athletes?
I think so. I think it can be at the point of contact. I think it can be preventative. Like, I don't know how they're going to develop it, but I think players should take a certain amount of CBD every day before practice. And it can be preventative there. At the point of contact, Dr. Raphael Meshulam has already said that if you have a closed head injury and you get a massive amount of CBD, and whatever that amount is, I don't know, but it can help mitigate some of the symptoms of a concussion, from the equilibrium to, you know, the brain swelling and brain bleeding, things of that nature. And then the quality of life after football. I think so. It can do three things. It can be preventative, help at the point of contact, and then after you leave the game or what have you, it can give you a quality of life and help prevent, you know, the closed head injury and the things that come from it.
All right, thanks for answering that. So we only have a couple of minutes left. I kind of like maybe a positive look for you. I mean, we talked about some negative stuff about where the industry's at and post COVID. Where do you see what's the positive outlook right now for the cannabis industry?
I'm very bullish on the cannabis industry as a whole. I like the turn that is happening because all industries have to do that, go through that. But I think when America 2.0 opens back up, we're going to be better and stronger. I think we're going to lose some people that we should lose. And so I just think the limit is there's no limit to the upside of cannabis. And I think we're going to be stronger. And one of the things that everybody has realized is that cannabis is an essential, you know. So it's a defensive stock. So people are gonna use it no matter, just like alcohol, but it's less harmful than and doesn't have the negative side effects like alcohol has. I think it's essential and it's here to stay. And last thing I want to say is, like, when Colorado, I know California's been doing it for a while, but when Colorado and Oregon went off, that was in 2012. And I tell people, like, listen, that's like the Wright brothers taking off a Kitty Hawk. It's only been 8 years. We're still growing. You know, we're damn near pushing the cannabis plane down the runway and cranking it up. We haven't gone to the twin propeller or the jet age. You know, I'm gonna be gone and whatever, and they'll remember some, you know, some fat old football player that was talking about the medicinal benefits. But this thing is going to take off, and I believe it's going to be it's going to be in every community. I think the Trojan horse to get it in is going to be CBD, and then once we're in, just open up the belly and show them everything, including THC coming out of there, especially THC. So I'm very bullish on this industry. I don't want to give like I'm negative on it, because I'm not. I'm here, and I think it can. Who said it? The great philosopher Bob Marley. It's like, this herb can change the world, and I think it's going to.
Okay, Marvin, thank you so much. Marvin Washington, everybody, thank you so much to spend your time with us today. And thank you, Susan Soros, for having us today and for a great event.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Susan.
Marvin. Great to see you. See you again soon.
Yeah,
Thank
Marvin, it was so great to get to know you more. That was really inspirational. I have a question for you. I'm starting to get trigger finger in this finger. What
you.
have
Yeah.
what have you learned about cannabis and arthritis?
For me, it's wonderful because there are some creams out there that are for me that are nano that you know what nano is, and then it gets under that, and then they add uh, some more herbs into it, and even some menthol that you're gonna feel it right away, but it's long lasting. I use my fingers. I use it like lotion in the morning. And if you need some cream or whatever, you have my email. Email me something, and I'll shoot you some cream and give me your address, and I'll let you try some of our cream, and it works wonder. It takes that pain away. Like when it's gonna get cold or when it's rain, my knees used to be able to tell, and my fingers definitely did. Due to the changes in the barometric system, people don't know that, but you can definitely do. I would say give it a try with a topical. And if you don't have access to a topical, I get you a topical.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I look forward to trying it. Thank you,
You're
Steve.
welcome.
Thank you for this interview. Thank you, Marvin, for participating. The video will be available by Monday, and I'll make sure that you get it. So thank you
Okay,
so much.
cool. I'll
Thanks
hang it
for
on my
having
social
me
media.
today.
All right.